The next thing I want to talk about is one of the biggest sticking points for most people in this model, and it's managing fear. Before I do dive into this topic, I want to acknowledge that this is actually a very sensitive topic for many people. Dr. Bruce Perry, who's an American psychiatrist and an expert on childhood trauma, says that as many as 70% of adult Americans have had at least one adverse childhood experience, and that could lead to a sensitized stress response or difficulty managing fear. So, thinking about that statistic, it's likely that there's at least one person in this room, maybe even more, who falls into that category. And if that's you, I don't want to disrespect you by my sort of slap on a band-aid approach that I'm going to be taking here. I want to be very clear that the tools that I'm offering are, I'm going to be giving you a few strategies for managing stress or fear in the moment, but they are in no way, shape, or form a replacement for a therapeutic intervention. Okay, so given that, I want to talk to you about the negative voice in your head. In my coaching school of thought, we call it the saboteur. And I know that there's some other coaches on the floor here, and you might have different terminology, which is equally valid. I'm going to be referring it to as the saboteur because a large part of what I'm going to be presenting here comes from the work of a very well-renowned coach, Shahzad Shameen, and he's developed what he calls the Saboteur Sage framework. And if you're actually interested in any of what I'm talking about today starts to ring some bells for you and you want to explore further, I highly recommend popping over to his website, positiveintelligence.com. He's got some great resources on that website that are free that you can tap in and explore some of these concepts. And he's also written a really great book, which I highly recommend as well. So what is the saboteur? The saboteur is a part of your psyche that develops when you're quite young. And it's designed to keep you safe and integrated into your family group. It's fear-based and it's very concerned with safety. That's why we often see it showing up when we step outside our comfort zones or do anything that may be even slightly risky. Normally what happens is as we progress into adulthood, the volume on the saboteur, it starts to dial down. Because you can imagine as a child, if you were to get excluded from your family group, that could literally mean death for you. As an adult, whilst it would be horrible and uncomfortable, it's not likely to lead to your death. So, as we progress into adulthood, usually the volume on the saboteur voice, it starts to dial down. But for whatever reason, maybe it could be something that happened to you when you were a child, or maybe even a triggering incident that happened to you as an adult. For whatever reason, for some of us at various stages in our life, the volume of the saboteur gets turned up to high. And this is actually one of the areas where coaching and therapy diverge. So as a therapist, they have the skills to help you excavate what happened to you, why they'll be able to help you answer the question, why is my saboteur voice still on high? As a coach, we tend to have more of a forward focus. So we just look at what's here, what is, and how to move forward. So we kind of have these sort of band-aid approaches that we use for working with a saboteur voice, but they, don't want to invalidate the important work that can be done with a therapist and understanding the why behind it. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the saboteur is really smart. It is part of you, it's as smart as you, and it also knows that the brain responds more to negative stimuli than positive stimuli. We call that the negativity bias. So what the saboteur does is, because we have this negativity bias, the saboteur uses really critical language, sometimes even cruel language, to have you do what it wants you to do. It might say things like, you're not good enough, or who do you think you are? That's the other thing, is that the saboteur can present in a number of different ways. You might hear it as a voice in your head. You might hear it as unruly emotions or unexpected emotions. It might show up as physical sensations. I've even had it described as a mist that can come over your mind so you can't really think clearly. So it can show up in all of those different ways.